Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or via one of the many podcasting platforms, today it's an interview show and I will introduce my guest Dennis Benjamin in a moment. This is the place for you to be inspired to live a life of passion that is guided by your self-awareness about who you are and what you want your life to be. Passion is a source of unlimited energy from your soul that enables you to produce extraordinary results, extraordinary, way above ordinary. And one of my favorite quotes is that greatness can only be achieved through passion. So you can well imagine that in my interview programs, I only interview people who are passionate. So my guest today in my conversation, in my interview, I don't know whether it's an interview or a conversation, you can make that decision later. My guest is Dennis Benjamin, who I've known since the 1980s. Hello, Dennis. Welcome to the show.
G'day, Charles. Good to be with you.
So let me tell you a bit about Dennis Benjamin, who lives in Melbourne as I do. He has experience in the law, investment banking, businesses, various businesses, and in the arts. Within one of those businesses, Dennis Benjamin invented and patented a messaging capability that was licensed globally to Microsoft and eBay. This followed issuing proceedings in the United States against the largest companies in the world, including Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. Although a few of those reached settlements with Dennis, the biggest learning factor was that if he had someone advising him years earlier, like conflict manager that I'll tell you about in a moment, Dennis felt he would have been significantly better off. Dennis had a successful and great learning experience with leading investment banking group in Australia, the Macquarie Bank. And after that, Dennis formed a company called Informatel. Its comprehensive offerings utilise data for better connecting clients with their customers as simply and cost effectively as possible. These days, the leadership team at Informatel runs the day-to-day digital businesses. Well delegated, Dennis. Now, Dennis has also set up Conflict Manager. So with his background as a lawyer and extensive business experience, Dennis has been involved in difficult litigation in Australia and USA. And I know many people watching and listening to this program have touched on or been involved in significant litigation. Dennis understands the stress and risks of litigation and has formed conflictmanager.com.au to project manage and support a party involved in a large family, wealth or business conflict. Prior to forming Conflict Manager, Dennis has advised a range of families in Australia and overseas in times of conflict with measured significant value-added results. Dennis works with existing lawyers of clients in project managing the conflict with a strategy focused on an outcome that meets the client's considered needs. Conflict Manager, as I say, conflictmanager.com.au is the website, has been established to provide strategy and support to better manage conflict of one party and their professional team. Its role is to take away as much stress as possible and keep any major dispute focused on the client's long-term benefit. Dennis and his team oversee the professionals and advisors involved in the conflict, but do not do the process work undertaken by each client's lawyers. The focus of the business is to support clients to get through all the difficulties of litigation with a view to getting the best practical result. And his other business that he's heavily involved in is called Art Directly. And he has a long time passion for art and is the chairman of Art Directly. So, in simple terms, where you have a need to discreetly sell or buy significant artworks, Art Directly can assist. Acquisitions are based on fair value as determined by recent sales or third-party valuations. So there you are. You've got art, you've got conflict, you've got data handling, you've got handling clients. Dennis, well done on all of your activities. Wonderful description of what you're up to. And so my starting question to you is, do you agree with my view that costs of litigation are so huge that the ordinary man in the street can't afford them?
I'd hope the ordinary man in the street is avoiding litigation as much as the ultra high net worth families are avoiding litigation. The cost and the stress involved is to be avoided wherever possible. Our whole focus at Conflict Manager is to seek resolution and seek agreement and have people move on with their lives, and we do that over a range of different areas and in adopting processes that are focused on a better outcome.
What's your sense these days in Australia, Melbourne particularly, because that's where you live and you and I know the Melbourne legal scene pretty well? You know, why do we need conflict manager? Can't lawyers do it all?
Yeah, great question. In fact, before mediators came along and before conflict manager came along, it was just the lawyers, and you go to the best lawyer you could afford, and with a view of making an impact by virtue of that appointment. But once you've crossed that line and you've gone to litigation, it's a long way back, and particularly in a relationship where you need to look to continue and grow, such as a family relationship, it's usually way too far down the track. With mediator, for example, they're involved in the process, but they're sitting in the middle. They're not taking sides, and they do an excellent job in that process. But conflict manager seeks to get involved before that and seeks to avoid people sitting on different sides. We do get involved, and we're using a whole range of processes, as I say, to get the parties to understand that they're going to be far better off reaching resolution.
So how does the process work? So people come to the website, and your advice to anyone who's looking at conflict is don't rush off to the lawyers, or certainly don't start a legal process without looking at alternative ways of solving a conflict. Is that a fair comment?
Oh, absolutely. Too often people think they're going to make that powerful punch by getting a better named solicitor involved, but that's just the start of the process. And it can be quite a difficult, challenging process in every respect.
Yeah. Well, I've certainly found that. I've advised people in legal conflicts on strategy when they've got their lawyers and they don't even understand what their lawyers are telling them or why something has to be as it is. So let's go to one of the lessons that you taught me in the 80s, or a piece of data rather than a lesson. But I use this, Dennis, and I call it hard on, easy off. It's very suggestive, isn't it? Hard on, easy off. I like being suggestive on this show. And it was you who brought to my attention the onboarding or the recruitment practices of Macquarie Bank, right? And you might not remember this, but you probably remember back to the process by which Macquarie Bank decided to employ you. And we can talk about that, but I'm impressed that you're able to sit and let Informatel be run by other people. So you've clearly learnt how to employ the right people. And I think that's one of the greatest skills that we need to have. So put those two together, because I tell people now you must be hard on. It's hard to get employed. And if you break the rules, easy off, get rid of people as quickly as possible. That's the meaning of hard on, easy off. Can you give me your views on this and what you learned from your onboarding at Macquarie?
Yeah, learned a lot of great lessons from Macquarie, but I'll give it to you in a conflict situation where we were brought in to a particular conflict of a trade union, and trade union itself was going through a particularly difficult time. And part of that trade union's difficulties arose because they weren't prepared to make some tough decisions that needed to be made. And you'd think a trade union would be all about tough decisions, but I was able to get an outcome in terms of driving consideration of what changes need to happen and benefit of the goals that we set at the outset. And that's very important. We always set goals at the outset. What is it that the parties want? What does resolution look like? What does the agreement look like that you want? What is it that is going to let you sleep better at night? And just recently, as last week, I had one where one of the parties, or two of the parties said, look, they didn't sleep all the night before, and we went into this process. And in actual fact, the end of the process, and that was a little bit earlier, but the end of the process, one of the parties told me how well they slept, and that's incredibly important, because what we're about is getting the parties resolving their conflict, no matter what that conflict's about, and letting them move on with their lives. If you go to litigation, you're only extending the pain and, in fact, growing it.
Well, you've made that's excellent answer, but it wasn't the question that I asked. I was asking you about hiring practices.
Oh, in terms of hiring,
why are you good at hiring people? What's your thinking around hiring people, which you clearly have hired for Informatel?
Yeah, Informatel's morphed into another business, but in terms of what we do is we are very, very selective. We take our time. We have a range of processes introduced, and then what we do is we make sure that people understand, just in the same way as conflict, that there are boundaries, and that if they go beyond those boundaries, it's just very hard to come back. So you start with a bag of credibility. It's very easy to lose a part of that credibility by doing the wrong thing, and very quickly you're left with no credibility or very little. So we make decisions.
Well, in terms of those boundaries, a lot of people are loath to sack people because of the rules of the Fair Work Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a conflict that you can resolve, but nevertheless, there are people who do breach the rules. And I see companies put up with bad performance with people who do breach, who do cross the boundaries, and they don't sack them because they're worried about a payout. And similarly to a conflict resolution, this is another form of conflict. What's your philosophy on dealing with problematic employees?
Charles, where possible, we'll organise a restructure of the business, and that may be that the problem employee isn't included in that restructure. And we tread very, very carefully. We don't want to make a decision that puts our client into a worse position. But I had someone approach me, and they had that exact situation, and they went and got advice from a particular industrial relations lawyer, and I said, look, this is the way I'd really like you to look at this, and this is how we need to drive it. And in actual fact, I said, go and speak to your industrial relations lawyer. The industrial relations lawyer challenged a bit because it was different, but they adopted the process that I recommended, and that was the end of it. And it saved a lot of grief, saved a lot of money, and they moved on with their business very successfully.
So tell me then, in terms of what you're passionate about, what is it about art that drives your passion and art directly? I mean, I love beautiful pictures on the wall. As you can see, I've got pictures my house is full of pictures, but I'm certainly not passionate about art, but you are. How did that come about?
I'd started with a friend of mine who's been wholesaling art for 30, 40 years, for more than 30 years, but probably not as much as 40. But and it grew through that. My family always was interested in art, but didn't invest in art in the same way as we like to invest in art. And it's just grown. I'm in the business with my son, our son Gil, who is an artist in his own right, and my wife Adette. And we look to offer a two-way market. We always look for a niche, and the niche is that we look for a two-way market. So if someone's looking to sell a good piece of art, we offer a confidential, discreet way of being able to purchase that art at fair value. So they can go and get it valued, and we'll talk to them about that value. They get it independently valued, and we'll say, look, you may get that, you may even get more, but this is what we think it's worth. Or we've had instances where we think it's worth a little bit more. We'll say, look, this is a fair price. And we do the deal on the basis that we have an awareness of the market. And sometimes we get stuck with a piece, but it's not a piece that we're terribly uncomfortable being stuck with. And we deal with the lower end as well in emerging artists and contemporary art for all tastes.
So tell me a story, Dennis. You surely, with all of this time you spent on art, you have had one or two spectacular wins. Now, you could be talking to me about Bitcoin that you bought at $1 is now worth 100,000, but don't talk about that. Give me one or two. Have you got any one or two stories where you bought something, you loved it, and it turned into a spectacularly profitable purchase?
Probably not as good as Bitcoin, but an exceptionally large Charles Blackman bought it at the right time. It's an impressive painting that we really like, and he died after reaching a good age and having a very full life, and that's done particularly well for us. But I've got to say that I can tell you some great stories, but I can also tell you that not every piece of art's going to go up. We've got artists that we've paid good money for, and they don't all go up, but you love to celebrate the good ones, and that's a particularly good one.
Well, I think as you were saying that, I think about buying anything. Buy a Ferrari. Why would I buy a Ferrari today? And I was reading one of the motoring. I don't invest in cars because I think it's a waste of money, but I love reading about people who invest in a Ferrari back in 1970 for $50,000 is now worth $2 million. I like those types of stories. And then I was thinking, as you were saying that, I go, yeah, what does make anything worth anything? For example, diamonds. When we understand the way that the De Beers company controls the diamond markets, it does so because there's plenty of diamonds on the planet. Diamonds are not rare, nor is gold. But nevertheless, this whole question of why does an artist become popular and therefore the artworks go up versus somebody else, and I look at them with an untrained eye and I go, why is this one better than that one? Because I can't see the difference, and one's worth $1 million and one's worth $10,000. What's your sense around this almost a mystery of art where you can help people resolve that mystery?
Yeah, look, it's having some insight. It's having an awareness of the rareness of some of the artists' pieces that, like a Del Catherine Barton or a Ben Quilty. There are a few artists where you just find them hard to acquire, and those pieces are very good. Being able to buy a Dale Frank or a Blackman, or there's the whole range of artists I could list off that do well. I can give you a list of artists that do well, and I can tell you that why I think they've done well. Some artists go up and down too with the market, so you've just got to have that insight. But it's also buying something you like. We don't ever advocate you just buy something because it's a piece for a value. You need to like the artist and the piece. We've got a significant piece that relates to a significant event in Australian history where the American ships came into Sydney Harbour in the 80s and they were nuclear armed, and we've got all the flotilla in Sydney Harbour and that's a particular event. How much is it worth? What's happened to its value? I don't know, because we haven't put it up for sale.
There is that uniqueness element, isn't there? That when things are unique, when it really surprises me when I see auctions, because of stuff that you go, why would someone pay big dollars for that because it's rare. So rarity is certainly prized in a world that's producing vast amounts of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many examples I could give you, but we'd be all day here with some of those examples. But not just in art, but across a range of fields where we've observed value changes.
Yeah. Now, I want to turn to a matter that is frequent. In fact, almost every show that I do, I turn my attention to health.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in your insights into getting healthier, how you used to be versus how you are now. I know you have a commitment to being healthy. What's been your journey in terms of improving health?
Yes, it's a great question, Charles. The thing is that I feel that as we get older, we need to prioritise our own time and give ourselves some space. Someone just asked me because I'm passionate about playing pennant bowls, and someone asked me, "Are you retired?" I said, "No, I'm busier than ever, but I've just allocated to a bit more training because I find it's my time of just de-stressing, apart from, of course, the value of being with grandchildren and my wife and family and friends."
Yeah, but that's you've done far more about your health than just play bowls.
But no, but it's also I've made changes in my life. Personal trainer twice a week to improve strength and balance. Diet, just reduce the amount of alcohol. Still love a drink, and if I feel like a drink, I'll have a drink. But just reduce the amount of alcohol. I don't eat before 12 o'clock. I've just really focused
There
on.
you are. That's a beautiful. That's exactly what I'm interested in. That not eating before 12 o'clock. So tell me your thinking around that, because quite a few people are now practicing that model.
Well, it was interesting for me because breakfast was my favourite meal, and I decided that I was going to cut back. So I said, look, I'm not eating before 12 o'clock, and I have a magnesium mineral drink in the morning, coffee with my wife, did, and have a chit chat, and then get stuck into work, but also manage to fit in a work and made changes to my life. For example, I got rid of a car. People would say, how could you? My wife said, you can't get rid of a car. I said, watch me. We had, during COVID, 5 cars between two of us. And I said, this is just crazy. So if I need something, if I need to go somewhere, I'll grab an Uber, and it's usually there within a couple of minutes and no parking problems. And we've got another car. But it also forces me to walk more. And it's just altered my life.
Well, tell me. I want to inspire people who are watching this conversation and listening to get excited about doing different things to get healthier. So, what's been the payoff for you?
Oh, immense. I walk more. I allocate more time for me in terms of when I'm taking a break. I think as you get older, you also stop to realize that your peace time is so important. Being able to put your head on the pillow and just relax and just know that you've addressed the issues as best you can. That's why conflict managers are motivated for me, because I'm very focused on people having the freedom from conflict in their lives and learning to deal with it. And dealing with conflict, by the way, Charles, if I can come back to that, is not turning your back on conflict in your family, for example, and just leaving it be because it's all too hard. I see that so often where you go to a family function, you say, where is this person? Oh, look, it's better they don't attend because it's just that they've made that decision. That can't be a good way to be. You've got to just, unless it's the absolute last resort. And I think you've got to do everything in your power to make sure that you're addressing your legacy as best you can, and you've got as much peace with people as you can.
I like it. Your passion for peace. I'm going to call you the passion for peace warrior. How
Is
about
that,
that?
is that a move on from the 80s, is it?
That's correct. So, address. You put. I take a note. Address your conflicts. Now, because we're running close to. I like to have these shows. I'm not a Joe Rogan, Dennis. I'm not going to go
Keep it
for
short.
2.5 hours. it's impressive that people will watch his shows for 2.5 hours. I mean, I must say it's quite impressive. Like, where do people get the time to watch Joe Rogan? But I want to give you a moment to tell us a story about particularly a family situation that through Conflict Manager, you helped to sort out. Because I love what you said then, that it's better to sort stuff out. And you said, address your legacy. You said, address your legacy. I like that line. So, can you give us a story of a success story where there were real problems within the family, and then the insights and the different thinking, because you think differently to many people, the different thinking that you brought to the table helped to resolve that conflict?
Okay, in terms of what we do as a group, we have our own distinct processes, but I'll take the most recent one I've just been working on, where the family was really struggling, and they were either no communication or communication of the wrong type. What we do is we want to understand what's the ultimate goal here. What is it you want? Because what I think they may want may not be what they see as what they want or need. It got to a stage where there was no discussion occurring between the parties, and what I did in this instance was I went in and started having a separate discussion to find out the real drivers, and it required a change. It required first of all, it required me listening and hearing what they were saying and what they really wanted by both parties, and then making people aware of what they need to do to build the trust and to show that take the steps and to, in fact, invoke the changes that were needed to get where they need to be, and to take it in a process in a way that will get them where I'm very confident they need to be for everyone's sake. And so it's just about applying the processes that we've put together to get people to realise that they've got a lot more to gain by being together. And I make people very aware of what the picture looks like should this continue. And it's quite interesting when you delve into what's occurred, what you find out from the family and how they've been, but you've got to change behaviours quite often, and that's what we do.
Yes, change behaviours. So you've been successful through your processes of getting people to want to change behaviour, because if they don't want to change behaviour, of course they don't.
No, before the want, there's got to be a realisation as to why, and they've got to understand why it's really important. Because without understanding the why, they won't want to change. But they've got to understand that why it's really significant. And that's a lot of what we do, because it looks very simple on the surface. Well, if it was so simple, the parties would just do it themselves. But the difficulty is there isn't the trust and there isn't the built respect of a track record and experience in having managed conflict that can get them from A to B to C in each step.
Well, indeed. Plenty of people want to lose weight, but they don't succeed. In fact, most people don't succeed. And so you might want to change behaviour, but you can't.
Worse, they succeed and then they put it back on because they haven't changed their behaviours enough.
And they say they want to. So, I mean, it's quite extraordinary. So being able to permanently create broadly permanently, because very little in our lives are permanent, but it is finding, it's almost what I'm hearing you say is that you look for perhaps a key to a door that will lead to a greater desire or a successful way of changing behaviour, and it's through the processes that you've developed over your long business career that helps you to ask better questions that leads to perhaps a key that unlocks a door that leads to behavioural change.
And getting the parties to understand why, and listening to helping them really understand the why question, because they may think they understand that, but it's really getting to the nub of that and making everyone accountable.
Excellent. Okay, last question. What's your vision, the Dennis Benjamin playbook for the next years to come? You know, what's your vision for your life for the next stage?
Look, I take a lot from my late father in that he lived life to the fullest. He was always very busy with activities and lived well into his 90s. And my attitude is just age is no barrier. I'm just going to keep building on the experience, learning every day, and hopefully working with enough good people to help make a difference in their lives in whatever type of conflict they have or whatever form of art they want to sell or buy at a good price.
At a good price. I like that. There was one more other question. What book, in your current thinking, what book would you recommend to somebody in their 30s, not in their 70s like you and me? What book to someone in their 30s would you recommend these days?
I'm so grateful for that question. There are a number of books, but the book that I just think was life-changing for me was going back to my days in Macquarie when we had to do the Dale Carnegie course, was How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think there's so much that I still have found of benefit over so many years in that course. And I've got to say that I thought that was a course I just really didn't need to do, but it was required of me. That was incredibly valuable.
So How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, that is still readily available to be purchased.
And all these years later, that there are key lessons that never criticise, condemn or complain. Live, in compartmentalise your life. There's so many things in there that I found of value.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining us on the Charles Covess Show today. I hope listening to Dennis and the conversation that we had makes a beneficial difference to your life, a life that I believe is meant to be all that you're capable of making of it. If you're new to the show, check the links for our foundational principles and my background and my websites where you can find my books, my passion speeches and programs and many extra free resources. Please subscribe to the show and share it with your networks. It won't cost you anything except the risk of greater passion, greater awareness and a greater enjoyment of your life. So again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of health-giving and energy-giving, passion, learning, fun, fulfillment, challenge, and ever-increasing self-awareness. And have a look again at my last week's program, which is all about having a great sex life. And I wish that for you as well. Have a great week. Thank you, Dennis. Bye for now.